As you know, the left has been unable to engage in any intelligent or honest debate for quite some time, and they have been working with their media allies to shrink what is called the Overton window, the range of acceptable speech, so that any disagreement with the left is considered unacceptable speech, offensive, outside the political correctness. And they do this because they can't defend their policy positions and they can't argue what the actual facts and data are. So they have to try and find a way to limit debate, ignore debate, extinguish debate on any political issue, declaring what they say is an undeniable fact. But the problem is, the right wing engaging in debate relies on actual facts and data. So how do you get people to ignore the facts and the data and being able to just capitulate to what the left-wing arguments is? And how do you shrink that Overton window? Well, it's by declaring everything a dog whistle. Yes, there's a difference between what you say and what you mean. And I came across this clip here whereby the left is admitting to developing different tools or different resources in order to try and ignore debate, to avoid debate, and just go about demonizing their ideological opponents, such as this.
And they use dog whistles. Like when Trump says deport all the illegals, what he's really saying is get all the Latinx people out of this country. When he's saying make America great again, he means make America white again. When he says let's take it back to the old days, he's saying let's take it back to the 50s where white people ruled this country. Using
how do we know that, though?
These dog whistle words, these phrases that Donald Trump uses, that Jack Posobiec uses, that Mike Cernovich uses, that most of the alt-right and the alt-right use are terms that mean something else. And there is some great dictionaries out there. I know you're not a huge fan of Jared Holt, but I'm sure he has a dictionary out there of right-wing terms that mean something else that are dog whistles.
Yes, dog whistles. So the left is unable to actually debate or argue what the right wing says. And so since they are unable to do that, they have to try and redefine words, redefine the language. And they go off and they actually project their own racism and their own biases and try to project it onto the right. So for instance, when he was talking about illegal immigration, well, when Republicans and conservatives, libertarians, when we talk about illegal immigrations, we're talking about a specific action, not a race. We're talking about people who have crossed our borders in violation of U.S. law or people who have overstayed their visa. And when it comes to illegal immigrants, it's not just Hispanics. There are Asians, blacks, and even white Europeans in the country illegally, and we do not discriminate between them when we say, hey, if you're here illegally, you need to get out of the country. You're in violation of the law. But according to the Democrats, only people of Hispanic descent are in the country illegally. And so because they have their own bias and preconceived notion of who is in the country illegally as being a racial demographic rather than people who commit a specific action, they project their biases onto the right wing. So they go off and they see this term, illegal immigrants. We have limited resources, so that we create laws and which dictate what is the legal and illegal way to enter the country to be able to immigrate to the United States. And if you are in violation of that law, then you are here illegally, therefore you must leave and be removed. And we reward people who come into the country legally. That's how the right wing defines it. And it's very hard to argue that particular point. And the Democrats, they want open borders. So what do? They redefined illegal immigrants as a race, as only being Latino descent, Hispanic descent. Which is projecting their own racism onto their ideological opponents. And then they write into their little dictionary, illegal immigrant means eradicate Hispanics from the population. Therefore, talking about illegal immigration, that's a dog whistle for racism. Or when it comes to making America great, when the right talks about making America great, we talk about getting back to what this country was founded on, the principles that made us great, our manufacturing and production capabilities, our work ethics, right? And creating an environment that allows that to happen, repealing all of the red tape and bureaucracy that is keeping us down. Now, that's very hard for the left to be able to argue that point. So what do? They redefine that term into their own little dictionary to say, it must mean white supremacy and white power. Because they can't ever argue the actual facts and data, they need to redefine the language, redefine terms. And then they are able to avoid debate by saying, yeah, but you don't actually mean that. As if the left has somehow evolved to the point where they are telepathic and can read your mind. No. What you say is not what you mean. You say one thing, but what you really mean is this. So instead of arguing what you said, I'm going to argue what I claim you mean. And it's a straw man approach, is all it is. It's a straw man approach in order to try and avoid debate. And they do this every single time. But yet, if we here on the right decide, you know what? We're going to do the same. We're going to create our own dictionary of left-wing terms, and then we're going to project onto them what we think they really mean. And then therefore, boom, when you say this, you don't actually mean this. When you say, that you support LGBT community, you don't actually mean that. You actually mean that you want them eradicated, marginalized, and enslaved to the Democrat Party. So yeah, what if we were to start doing that? Well, then this would destroy the idea of debate. The whole idea of debate is when you talk about issues, you talk about what you actually believe and what you actually think is the solutions. But when the left talks about debate, they talk about straw man approach. They want to debate what they want to project onto you rather than debate what you actually say. And in using this dictionary, groups like Antifa have gone through and created these various dictionaries where they go off what you say doesn't mean what the words mean. It means this other thing. And so then they can go off and use that to justify violence. When they go off and they call you a racist, a fascist, a Nazi, it's not because what you say or what you do actually lines up with the definition of the words racist, fascism, or Nazi, but because they've redefined what your words mean to mean the exact opposite of what you say. Therefore, anybody who disagrees with them is a racist, fascist, and Nazi because they just make it up. They can't debate the issue, so they make up different issues. They can't debate your statements, so they redefine your statements. They try to redefine the language, and they're constantly going off and redefining the language, trying to redefine what is and isn't considered racist, what isn't and is considered sexism. They're constantly redefining that so that they can always keep shifting the goalpost of what is and isn't acceptable speech so that they can continually avoid debate on any and all issues because they have no substance behind them, because they have zero facts or data to back up their policy positions. And knowing that, putting people on a debate stage, listening to a Republican and then listening to the Democrat, people will agree with what the Republican says 90% of the time because it's rational and thoughtful. So redefining the language, now all of a sudden, as the Republican talks about, hey, we have these laws on the books. We can either enforce the laws or through the democratic process of Congress, change the laws. But we should not reward people for breaking the laws. Nobody can actually disagree with that statement. And because of that, the left, in trying to promote open borders, but knowing that open borders is very unpopular, redefines the language so that now that very reasonable statement that 90% of all rational people could agree with will now redefine it saying, that's what he means is actually getting rid of all the Latinos and all the Hispanic people from society. Therefore, he's promoting racism. Don't listen to him. And people on the left will actually go, oh, wow, that is a dog whistle. Oh, okay. Because I want to be accepted in these social circles, I will agree with that. And now while I don't, promote open borders, I don't think we should do anything to stop people from crossing the borders. And they never realize how irrational or stupid that argument sounds. And they don't understand that illegal immigrants is not defined by a race, but defined by an action. So they don't understand that in trying to redefine all of these things to claim that they are dog whistles, that they're projecting their own racism and biases into their actions, into this dictionary. It's all about projection. The left will always project onto you the sins and the moral failings that they themselves are guilty of.